Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining IP Talons as we discuss today's webinar topic, U.S. Higher Education Research Security, the strengths, the challenges, and what does the future look like? My name is Stefano Serafini, and I am Executive Vice President for International Business Development here at IP Talons. I'm happy to be your host today for this webinar. It is a great honor for me to introduce to you the Associate Vice Chancellor and Chief Research Security Officer for the Texas A&M University, Dr. Kevin Gamache. Dr. Gamache, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Stefano.
Well, Dr. Gamache, I know our colleagues here at IP Talons have had many positive experiences working with you and your staff at the Texas and A&M. But for those in our audience who may not be familiar with you or your team or research security in general, I just wanted to provide them some brief background.
Okay.
As I mentioned, Dr. Gamache is the Associate Vice Chancellor and Chief Research Security Officer at the Texas A&M University. In this capacity, he is responsible for ensuring that the 11 universities and 8 state agencies within the A&M system comply with U.S. government requirements for protecting sensitive federal information. He is regularly called upon to brief the intelligence community, congressional staff, and the national academies on securing the academic research enterprise. He has testified before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Border Security and Immigration, and the House Science Committee on this topic. Dr. Gamache established the Academic Security and Counter-Exploitation Program, an affinity group of security and compliance professionals at universities across the United States. He was instrumental in establishing an annual security conference explicitly focused on the unique challenges of maintaining an effective security program in the open environment of academia. His leadership role and efforts on behalf of the academic security community resulted in the Texas A&M University System's Industrial Security Program receiving the James S. Cogswell Award from the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency, or DCSA, in 2015, 2019, and 2022. With this in mind, you can see why we've asked and are very lucky to have Dr. Gamache speak on this important topic today. So with that being said, Kevin, I believe we've had a few questions submitted for you. So if you're ready, why don't we get started?
All right, great.
Okay, first question. Besides regulations, in your view, why should higher education have a research security program to begin with?
Well, I think the first reason is obvious, and that's to protect sensitive research data from authorized access. This includes things like data that could be used for malicious purposes, such as developing weapons of mass destruction, information that could be used for conducting cyber attacks or violating privacy. I think it's also important to protect our intellectual property from theft or misuse. We want to make sure that we are the ones that are controlling access to our own intellectual property. Whether it is research findings or inventions or other proprietary information that could be used to gain a competitive advantage, we want to make sure we control access to our own intellectual property. Another thing that I think is important and should be understood is, research security can go a long way in helping us protect the safety of our students, our faculty, and our staff. Some research projects involve the use of hazardous materials and other dangerous substances. And a research security program, a well-developed research security program, should take into account the safety of our research as well. And then finally, research security can also help maintain the integrity of the research process. Research security program can help us ensure that research is conducted ethically and following professional standards.
Yeah, excellent points. Very good points, even for some of us and those of us in the audience, those of our audience members who may have already started some research security programs. Very good reminders. All right, the second question. Why do you believe the US government and our allies continue to place more requirements on higher education? And as a second follow-up question to that, Kevin, do you think this will impact advances in science and technology and collaboration?
Well, I think there are a number of reasons that the U.S. government and our allies continue to place more requirements on higher education. First, we're witnessing an increasing sophistication of foreign espionage and cyber attacks. Foreign governments and other actors are becoming more sophisticated in stealing sensitive research data and intellectual property, and it's a growing threat to the security of the United States and our allies. Next, the growing importance of science and technology to national security. Science and technology are playing an increasingly important role in national security. When you look at things like advances in artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and material science that could be used to develop new weapons or to conduct cyber attacks, I think those are perfect illustrations of why we are seeing an increasing emphasis on research security. The need to protect the integrity of the research process, as I just mentioned. We can't really talk about research security without including research integrity in that process. And research is conducted in an increasingly globalized environment, and there's a growing risk that foreign actors could interfere with or manipulate research outcomes. So these increased requirements on research security could also have negative impacts on advances in science and technology and collaboration for that matter. But it's essential to note that these requirements are designed to protect the research process's integrity and safeguard sensitive research data and intellectual property. We can take steps to mitigate the risks of foreign espionage and cyber attacks. And we can also help ensure that the United States remains at the forefront of scientific and technological innovation. The two are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, agreed. Kevin, you mentioned that there could be some negative effects or impacts as a result of this increased scrutiny or the requirements. Could you just give maybe one or two examples, not so much to kind of scare the audience, but to raise awareness so people can, be prepared and recognize them for what they are?
Sure. I think it's obvious that the increased focus on research security is not a cost neutral effort. There are going to be increased costs and to some degree increased bureaucracy. The increased requirements on research security can add to the cost and bureaucracy of conducting research. And that could make it more difficult for smaller institutions and researchers to conduct research. There's also the potential for reduced collaboration with foreign researchers. The requirements or the increased requirements for research security could make it more difficult for researchers to collaborate, could limit the sharing of ideas and the advancement of science. And then finally, I think, there's a potential for increased scrutiny of research. This could make it more difficult for researchers to publish their findings and could discourage them from conducting controversial research. But despite these potential challenges, I think it's essential to remember that these increased requirements on research security are designed to protect the research processes, research integrity, to safeguard sensitive research data and intellectual property. And by taking steps to mitigate the risks of foreign espionage and cyber attacks, we can help to ensure that the United States remains at the forefront of scientific and technological innovation.
Great points and great examples. Thank you. Well, great segue point, because the next question has to do with what you believe, or in your opinion, given your extensive and vast experience in this area, what do you believe are the foundational principles and strengths that make U.S. higher education and research enterprises the envy of the world?
Well, you know, we're fortunate that the United States has long been a leader in higher education and research. And, you know, some of the foundational principles and strengths that contribute to this success include a strong commitment to academic freedom. Academic freedom is the right of the faculty members to teach and research without interference from outside interests. This is essential for the free exchange of ideas and the advancement of knowledge. Another thing that has led to the strength of the program we have in the United States is a culture of openness that fosters innovation. U.S. universities are not only centers of research, but also of innovation. They're home to many startups and spin-offs that create new businesses and jobs. And you know, that is the beauty of the system that we have here in the United States. I think we also have a very strong emphasis on research itself. U.S. universities are at the forefront of research in various fields. This research contributes to the advancement of knowledge and the development of new technologies. And then finally, a commitment to excellence. U.S. universities are committed to providing students with high quality education. And this is reflected in the high standards for admission that we have, the rigorous curriculum, and then finally, a very dedicated faculty.
Wow, great points. And you've already answered parts of this next question, because you led with that with your answer. But how do our strengths, and you listed many, how do they impact positively or negatively U.S. research and higher education? You already mentioned some. Obviously, we have a culture of openness uh, and academic freedom. How do those strengths impact that research enterprise, for better or for worse?
Yeah, well, you know, I think we can take a look at some specific examples of what has resulted from our research to answer, or to illustrate that question. You know, the development of the internet and the World Wide Web was made possible by research conducted at U.S. universities. Research conducted at U.S. universities has driven the development of new drugs and medical treatments. It's led to the development of new technologies for clean energy and environmental protection. And then finally, U.S. universities have pioneered the development of new approaches to education and learning itself. So, you know, the core competencies that have made our U.S. system of higher education the best in the world have also resulted in innovations that have led the world as well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Very strong points. If I could be so bold as to add to that, some of these very strengths can also be exploited by adversaries, or people intent on exploiting or stealing IP and innovation. I mean, the fact that we have such a strong principle of academic freedom and openness, that can be a double-edged sword, right? Because that can be taken advantage of by nefarious actors who can use that to then, draw unsuspecting or unwitting researchers to get information that is very helpful to them, and they don't necessarily have to be very direct about it. They can be very circuitous, or just take bits and pieces from one or two researchers and then put that together with some other information they may have gathered from other researchers. So it's a double-edged sword, but all the more reason to highlight these strengths for the awareness of our audience and for the larger enterprise.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Stefano, that what has been historically our greatest strengths have become, in a large sense, our biggest vulnerabilities today. And that sense of openness uh, makes us vulnerable to exploitation. And you could go down the line and look at how our strengths are being used now as vulnerabilities, and that is all the more reason why we need to have integrated and innovative research security as an important part of the university enterprise.
I like that. Integrated and innovative. Terrific, terrific term. All right. So as we're talking about the strengths and weaknesses and raising awareness, I think we can move on to the next question, which is how or what, Kevin, can research security professionals do, specifically both faculty and researchers, so not both ends of the spectrum. How can they, or how can professionals help convince faculty and researchers that the new requirements in legislation or requirements that have been passed by Congress recently, such as NSPM 33, the Chips and Science Act, that these are necessary? They're not nice to have, check box type of exercise, but these are necessary and ultimately will help their research and the larger university research enterprises.
Yeah, I think there are a number of things that we can look at, and a number of tips that we can incorporate for communicating with the faculty and the researchers. Helping them understand the purpose behind NSPM 33 and the CHIPS Act and the new DoD requirements that have just come out. I think the first thing that we can do is start by explaining the need for research security. It's important to protect the sensitive research data and the intellectual property that's being generated by universities. But the bottom line here is, our efforts are aimed at protecting the intellectual property and the innovation of individual researchers. I would like the researchers within the A&M system to view research security as an integral part of their research effort. I want them to understand that some of the information that they develop as a result of their research could be used for malicious purposes, such as developing weapons of mass destruction, conducting cyber attacks, or violating privacy. And I'm sure none of those researchers would like the results of their research to be used for nefarious reasons. The next thing that we could do is explain the specific requirements of NSPM 33 and the CHIPS Act. The requirements are there to help universities protect their research data and intellectual property. That's the bottom line. And the requirements include things like developing and implementing research security policies and procedures. So we're all working off a common sheet of music. It can include conducting risk assessments and training faculty and staff on research security. Those all, to me, are very reasonable approaches to protecting something that is so important to our country and to our national security. The next thing that could be done is to emphasize the new the new requirements are not intended to stifle research. On the contrary, I think research security can help ensure that research is conducted ethically and following professional standards. And by doing that and protecting research data and intellectual property, universities can ensure that the research is not compromised and that the researchers can continue to conduct cutting edge research. We also need to be responsive to the concerns of faculty and researchers. Some faculties have concerns about the new requirements. We need to listen to them, to their concerns, and address those concerns promptly and respectfully. This really is a team effort. We need to provide resources and support to faculty and researchers. Universities should provide the faculty and researchers with the resources that are necessary to support and to comply with these new requirements. This could include things like training, technical assistance, and funding. And then finally, we need to all communicate effectively with faculty and researchers so that they understand these new requirements. That communication is essential. And there are, a number of ways that we can do this, whether through email or holding workshops and websites and that kind of thing. But the one thing that I have found in the years that I've been doing this that is most effective is that one-on-one relationship with a researcher. I think if we follow all of these tips, helping to convince the faculty of the need for things like NSPM 33 and the CHIPS Act, and that ultimately this is all designed to help them in their research and to protect their intellectual property.
Absolutely, all excellent points. One thing I hear a lot about, both in the States, and we're talking about U.S. higher education, but also just at any of the conferences we attend, and we're speaking to researchers and academics from across the globe, the global research enterprise, is one thing that they're very concerned about, and everybody would be, is reputation. Whether it's the institutional reputation or the individual researcher's reputation. Ultimately, that's what is what goes beyond an exercise of making sure that they're not in conflict of interest, that they've made sure that their funding is all above board. Is at the end of the day, is their reputation intact? We talk about research integrity, and it's also about a reputation thing. So hopefully every one of the people in our audience can understand that at the end of the day, this is also to protect their, whether institutional or personal reputation as a researcher. And totally agree that it's a team effort. It's very much a consensus approach that should be taken, because if the researchers are not involved and they don't have buy-in, and the faculty aren't involved and they don't have buy-in, then this is going to be a very difficult challenge to tackle.
Yeah, your point is well taken, Stefano. One of the major things that we are trying to address in our research security efforts is that reputational risk, whether it is to the university or to the individual researcher.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have one final question, Kevin, and this is where we're going to be putting you a little bit more on the spot than you already are today. If you could look into that crystal ball you have in front of you somewhere and give us an idea of where do you see higher education in 5 to 10 years as it relates to research security, foreign influence, and U.S. universities' ability to collaborate with international counterparts. And I'll caveat that obviously we're talking about, when we talk about CHIPS Act and DoD requirements and NSPM 33, these are developments that have happened relatively recently in the past couple of years, even though what's led to them has been something that's been ongoing for some time. But this latest sense of urgency, if you will, has only been in the past couple of years. So things are moving quickly and rapidly, obviously. But in 5 to 10 years, where do you see things?
Okay. Well, You alluded to, I think, a very important point. Before we look ahead 5 to 10 years, I think if we took a quick look back 5 to 10 years ago, research security was not even a concept. That's something that's come about in the last 5 years. So, I've been doing this job for about 10 years now. And, when I first started this effort to think about things in terms of research security and, adversaries um, who had a formal effort to gain access to our research and that kind of thing. Those were all foreign and really were not very well received ideas 5 to 10 years ago. So I think, we've already come a long way. And when I look forward to the next 5 or 10 years, I think it's a given that there's going to be an increased emphasis on research security. The threat of foreign espionage and cyber attacks is increasing. Universities are under increasing pressure to protect their research data and intellectual property. It's going to lead to an increased investment in research security programs and a greater focus on training faculty and staff on research security. But I think what goes hand in hand with that is, as we do those things, a culture of research security is going to grow out of those efforts, and I think that's a positive thing. I think there's going to be increased scrutiny of foreign influence. The U.S. government's increasingly concerned about the influence of foreign government and other actors on U.S. research. And this is going to lead to an increased scrutiny of foreign funding for research, foreign students, and their enrollment in U.S. universities. And it's also going to result in increased scrutiny of foreign collaborations with U.S. researchers. I think there are going to be some challenges to collaborations with international counterparts. The increased focus on research security and foreign influence could make it more difficult for U.S. universities to collaborate with international counterparts. But I really believe that universities will find a way to collaborate effectively while still protecting their research data and intellectual property. And I think the way that we can do this is to understand who we're collaborating with, who's funding those collaborators, what kind of potential state connections are involved with those collaborations. And then, armed with that information, we can make risk-based decisions and put mitigating measures in place. Increased scrutiny of foreign collaborations does not necessarily mean that those collaborations can't continue. We just need to be able to do it in a risk-informed way. So I think those are the things that I see as significant research security changes over the next 5 to 10 years. But I really think that we can do this without having a negative impact on what has made our research enterprise the best in the world. And that's the one thing that I do see also 5 to 10 years from now, is that we will maintain that position because we'll come up with the innovative solutions that allow us to continue to collaborate.
That's a great way to finish up that answer, Kevin. Just a message of optimism and hope that we will still be there leading the way, likely because we're taking these measures now
Right.
to invest in our future. And if I could, you mentioned investment just a few minutes ago, but also in a couple of answers ago, you talked about the increased cost that and bureaucracy that the increased scrutiny could lead to. And it got me thinking about, the old adage of very few things cost less with time. Things get more expensive with time if you're trying to make an investment, right? And right now, based on what you've said and based on your experience, it sounds like making a small investment now is going to pay tremendous dividends down the road, for a whole number of reasons. Securing the research, the IP, the innovation, and the reputations. Just a small investment now will yield dividends down the road.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Dr. Gamache, thank you again for your comments today. We really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us to talk about this very important issue. Do you have any parting comments for our audience?
No, I'll leave them with that note of optimism. I think we've come a long way in the last 5 years. We're going to go a lot farther in the next 5 to 10 years. But the light at the end of the tunnel is bright. I think we will still be the best in the world at what we do, but we'll do it. I think in a more risk-informed manner, and with an increased culture of research security as an important part of our research effort.
Excellent, excellent. Well, with that said, for our audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to email us at info@iptalents.com. And as always, stay tuned for more upcoming webinars. We're wishing everyone here, and Dr. Gamache, you as well, a terrific week. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Stefano.